let's talk a little bit about some activities we can do to support students' development in their understanding of sound-letter relationships, or phonics. The first thing we can do is silent readings. Silent reading just allows the student time by themselves to read silently. We could tell students to read a certain amount of text, and for those who inevitably finish early, we can just ask them to reread the material, and that will just strengthen their understanding and fluency with the text. Students who are struggling during this time, we can go around the class and work more individually with those students and allow them to whisper read or to follow us as we read the text and follow along with their finger, or repeat after us. Besides silent reading, we can engage in choral reading, and that is just allowing the students to read a selection of the text together in small groups or along with the teacher as a whole class. We can read along at a moderate rate. Now, it's important that students get the opportunity to practice reading before they actually do the reading so that they'll feel comfortable and they'll be more engaged and willing to participate in the reading. Another kind of reading is individual turns. Now, we can do this in small groups. We can call on individual students to read aloud and go around the room. Rather than going each by each around the room, a more effective method is called the popcorn method, and this is just randomly calling on students. This allows students to pay attention and be engaged throughout the activity. It's important, however, to keep a fast pace as you're doing this activity. It's equally important to ensure that students have an opportunity to practice reading the text by themselves beforehand. They can practice reading by themselves, with a partner, and chorally before they're called on to read by themselves. That way, they can show what they know rather than dealing with the possible embarrassment of not being able to read well in front of their peers. A final idea for teaching reading is called close reading. This is where the teacher reads the text aloud and stops at a particular point. When the teacher stops reading the text, the students are expected to fill in the next word. The benefit of doing close reading is that it helps students to make predictions about what the next word is going to be, or it can be used to help reinforce new vocabulary that learners have just used or just learned. Another kind of reading is called partner reading. This is where the teacher assigns each student to read with a partner. There are a variety of ways they can do this. Either the reader whisper reads to a partner, students take turns sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph, or other text segment. Students can read the material together, or the weaker reader can repeat after the stronger reader, or follow along with their finger. And of course, each partner can correct or offer suggestions to the other partner when they're struggling with the text. Now that we've discussed some techniques for teaching phonics, let's look at some more specific phonics exercises that we can do to support our students' phonics development. One of these is to give students the chance to make as many words as they can using word families. So for example, I might present students with the word family at, and they have to come up with as many words as they can, such as fat, mat, cat, hat, and so forth. A second idea is simply an I Spy game, like those of our own childhood. For example, we look around the room and children have to spy for things that begin with a particular letter. Alternatively, we could give them a scavenger hunt and have them look around the room for as many examples of things that begin with a certain letter. Another idea would be giving students examples of words, and they have to find the odd word out. So for example, lunch, munch, bunch, and hatch. Students listen to these words, see them spelled, and then have to decide which word does not fit, which one does not belong in that word family. Another idea is having students stretch various sounds out to hear the various sounds in the word. For example, in the word man, we could say to students, let's say this together. Let's stretch this word out as much as possible. And that allows them to hear the stretchy sounds. Now we have to be careful in the sounds we choose. For example, the word bat doesn't lead itself to being stretched out very well. However, or words that are continuant sounds like that lend themselves very well to stretching themselves out and students hearing the difference. Another idea is a simple concentration game, and this can be done by allowing students to match big letters with small letters, or giving students pictures or words with various beginning sounds, and then the students have to match the picture with the letter that makes that sound. Another idea is invented spelling, and that is basically allowing students to spell words as those words sound to the student. So for example, if the word home sounds to me like H-O-M, I can spell it that way. When students do this, that is, spelling words as they sound to the student, they are making the connection between the letters and the sounds. Research with first language learners shows that even if they invent spelling as a younger learner, they eventually grow out of that invented spelling through practice in the language and opportunities to read and write widely. Another idea is using books with rhymes. For example, the Dr. Seuss classics. Reading books with lots of rhymes helps students realize that words are similar, but they can also be a little bit different. When they start to think about that, they start to realize that words are made of separate sounds, and that is the first step towards phonemic awareness. Another idea is predictable books. Predictable books are books that are very similar, such as the example on the slide. Mom has a big box, Mom has a big bag, Mom has a big wig. The only difference in each of these sentences is the final word. This allows students to read lots of repetitive text that is slightly different. The slight difference in the text will present some challenge and will maintain the learner's interest as they read the text, giving them lots of practice making sound-letter connections. Another idea is having students read books that offer some context. Again, this allows the learner to pay attention to not just the letters on the word, but also the pictures, and use the knowledge of cues in the text outside of the letters to help them understand the text. This is valuable because it draws on their background knowledge and draws on their top-down processing ability. And again, an effective reader is one who can use both top-down and bottom-up processing to help them make sense of text. Bingo games can also be helpful, as the one we see here in the slide. These allow students to get familiar with words and think about how words are the same, how the words are different. By choosing words that are similar but a little bit different, maybe various word families, this helps the students identify words, and distinguish the difference between words in how they sound. Walking phonics is another fun and interesting idea for kinesthetic learners. This works by the teacher taking 26 pieces of paper and on each piece of paper writing a large letter of the alphabet. The teacher might then laminate these papers. If the teacher has 5 minutes left over at the end of class and wants to play a quick game, the teacher can spread all of these letters out on the floor. Put one team on one side of the room, another team on the other side of the room. They can rock, scissors, paper. The winner will get the first chance. The teacher says a word, and the student has to walk or jump from letter to letter to spell that word. If they can spell the word, they get points. If not, the other team gets a chance. Two other ideas are the sound letter race and the fly swatter game. Sound letter race works by the teacher putting letters up on a magnetic board or on a board at the front of the classroom. The students stand at the back in two teams. When the teacher says go, one person from each team runs up and grabs the letter according to the sound that the teacher says. The fly swatter game works on a simple and similar way, except each team member has a fly swatter in their hand. When the teacher calls out the word, the members of the two teams, each member has to run up to the board, and the first one to hit the correct word with a fly swatter gets the point. Another idea is the phonics flashcard activity or game. This one has the class divided into two teams that are each numbered off. The teacher holds up the flashcard at the front of the room, and when the teacher shows the flashcard and says the number 1, each of the number 1s for the two teams has to stand up. The first that can read the word gets a point. If the teacher says the number 6, the two number 6s from each team has to stand up, and if each can read the word, they get the point, so on and so forth. Some other ideas for practicing letter writing is using apps, letter writing apps. In my experience, I have found that learners who don't enjoy writing letters out and practicing letters out by hand much prefer to do it with apps. And some of these free apps, students will sit there and spend a significant amount of time tracing and retracing the letters to get the practice that they need to connect the sound to the letter and to practice being able to write the letter. Now, let's finish off with a review of good phonics instruction. The first thing to keep in mind is that good phonics instruction builds on concepts about print. That is, learners understand how books work. Secondly, good phonics instruction relies on learner knowledge of phonemic awareness. That is, they understand that words are made of separate sounds. Thirdly, good phonics instruction shows clear sound and letter relationships. That is, learners are able to understand consistently what sounds go with what letters. Fourthly, learners are allowed to use invented spelling practice. In doing this, they are able to make the sound and letter connections as they write. Fifthly, good phonics instruction does not try to do too much. As with the April program, we teach the basics, and then the learners, through lots of reading practice, are able to fill in their gaps in the phonics knowledge. Lastly, and probably most importantly, good phonics instruction gives chances for practice with actual texts, not just individual words. So learners learn to read through listening to stories, through reading stories, engaging with longer stretches of text, so that they're excited and interested in learning about texts, learning from texts, and then they want to go out, read more themselves, and become the kind of lifelong readers that we want to encourage. This has been a presentation of an introduction to teaching phonics. My name is Dennis Murphy-Odo. Thank you very much for your time.